Okay, so last time you recall, we looked at Moses's childhood, his early experience, things that might have made him who he is. And in particular, we began to look at his first the burning bush and his commission, and then his first appearance before Pharaoh and the consequences of that. And we're going to pick up with that again now. Let me share my screen. So let me minimize this. Okay. I don't know why this does this. Gives me. So, okay. Well, last time it went away. Hopefully it will again. Um, there it goes. So the overseers of the Israelites found themselves in trouble because of the order. That is, you must not reduce the daily quantity of brooks. And so they left Pharaoh's presence. They came to Moses and Aaron, and they said to them, May Adonai look upon you and punish you for making us loathsome to Pharaoh and his courtiers, putting a sword in their hands to slay us. So they have to make the same quota of brooks, and there will be no straw. They'll have to gather that as well. The overseers are, in this case, the Israelite overseers. And so they go from Pharaoh and they tell Moses, you've just made things worse. And now Moses returns to God. And this is really a low point. Oh Lord, why did you bring harm to this people? Why did you send me? Ever since I came to Pharaoh to speak in your name, he has dealt worse with this people. And still you have not delivered your people. So Moses really says two things here to God. His first statement is, why did you bring harm to this people? And I think that that is telling because Moses really, he also says, why did you send me? But it's not about him. It's really about the people. And this, I think, is an example of Moses's leadership. He is advocating for the people, and he's saying to God, you just said by sending me, you made it worse. And you still haven't done anything good. You haven't delivered the people. So this is Moses in his relationship with God, pleading with God. If he wants Moses, then things have to get better. So this is what God says to Moses. Say therefore to the Israelite people, I am Adonai, I will free you from the labors of the Egyptians, deliver you from bondage. I will redeem you with an outstretched arm through extraordinary chastisements. I'll take you to be my people. I will be your God. You will know that I am Adonai, the God who freed you from the labors of the Egyptians. I'll bring you to the land I swore to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob and give it to you for a possession. So Moses is supposed to give this speech, and this will, in a sense, put everything in perspective and bring things back as he is promising the Israelites, not only that he'll redeem them, but he will take the Israelites to him. They will have a special relationship with God. And you'll know that I am the one who freed you from the labors of the Egyptians. Not only that, I will bring you to the land. When Moses told this to the Israelites, they would not listen. Their spirits crushed by cruel bondage. So God gives Moses something to tell them, doesn't work. And now we're going to jump ahead because we know it did work. So God did what he said he would do. And here we are at the plague of the insects. They invade Pharaoh's palace, the houses of his courtiers throughout the land. The land was ruined because of the swarms of insects. And Pharaoh summoned Moses and Aaron, and he says, go sacrifice to your God within the land. So here we see Pharaoh is finally beginning to make some allowances. But remember what Moses had asked? He said, let us go 3 days into the wilderness. And here Pharaoh is, in a sense, negotiating. And he's saying, okay, you can sacrifice to your God because I see the consequences of that. And Moses said, it would not be right for us to do that. For what we sacrifice to our God is untouchable to the Egyptians. If we sacrifice that which is untouchable before their eyes, will they not stone us? And so we must go a distance of 3 days to the wilderness and sacrifice as God may command us. So here, Moses, I think, I'm not sure this is true. He's not telling Pharaoh what he is sacrificing. This may be a ploy. Why 3 days? Undoubtedly, because they need that much time to get away. That is to say, if Pharaoh is going to pursue them, they need a good distance. Moses, of course, is not intending to bring the people back. God did not send him simply to bring them out and to make a sacrifice. Moses is intending to continue on to the promised land. But here he's giving Pharaoh an out. He's saying, in effect, look, I appreciate what you're willing to do, but I'm just afraid it won't work. So, and Pharaoh says, I will let you go, but don't go very far. So Pharaoh, you can see this negotiation. And Pharaoh say, okay, you can leave, but don't go very far. Pharaoh doesn't want to let them out. They're his slaves. And this is also a change in Pharaoh. Remember originally that Pharaoh wanted simply, he was concerned that the Israelites would, this is what he says to his advisors, let us deal wisely with them, because if our enemies attack, we're afraid that they, as a mighty numerous people, might join them and be a third column. Things have progressed from then. Rather than sending the Israelites away so that they won't be there in case of an attack, Pharaoh now wants to keep them. They are slaves. They're doing work that needs to be done. Pharaoh doesn't want to leave. But here, Pharaoh's saying, okay, but you've got to plead for them, plead for me here. And Moses said, I will leave your presence. I will plead with Adonai that the swarms of insects depart tomorrow from Pharaoh and his courtiers and his people. Let not Pharaoh again act deceitfully, not letting the people go. So here it's interesting that he does not ask God to let these swarms go right away. This is a strategic move. If Moses had done as Pharaoh asked and immediately turned to God and asked that the swarms relent, Pharaoh could easily have said, well, they were going to go anyway. By Moses setting a specific time, then Pharaoh will see, he hopes, that this is not just something that happened, that the swarms moved on, but in fact, this had to do with Moses. This has to do with God. So Moses leads Pharaoh's presence, pleads with God, and God did as Moses asked, removing the swarms of insects, and from his people, not one remained. Now, this is really a step up in this relationship. Up to this point, God has been kind of dictating what will happen. And here, God is allowing Moses to call the shots. And that, I think, is quite striking. There's more of a partnership here than we saw before. Okay, so now we're moving on a bit. This is the plague of darkness, the penultimate plague before the plague of the firstborn, when they will in fact leave. People could not see each other. For 3 days, no one could move about, but the Israelites had light in their dwellings. Pharaoh summons Moses and says, go worship Adonai. This is now not, I will let you worship. This is a command. Go worship Adonai. Only your flocks and your herds shall be left behind. Even your dependents may go with you. No longer is he talking about go nearby. And Moses says, you yourself must provide us with sacrifices and burnt offerings to offer our God. So now this is not just, this is really upping the ante. Moses is clearly fed up, and he says, first of all, you'll give us the animals. Second of all, nonetheless, we will take our livestock and they'll go with us. Not a hoof shall remain behind, for we must select it for the worship of our God. So he's a little bit contradicting himself. Because on the one hand, he's saying Pharaoh is going to do it. On the other hand, he says, well, we have to take everything since we will have to select, and we won't know what we are to worship until we arrive there. God stiffens Pharaoh's heart, so he would not agree to let them go. Pharaoh says, be gone from me, take care not to see me again. For the moment you look upon my face, you will die. And Moses says, you have spoken rightly. I will not see your face again. Very, very ominous. All right, I'm going to stop here because they're about to get out of Egypt, and let's see if there are any questions or comments. There we go. Okay, questions, comments, anything at all about the Exodus? Yes. Go ahead, Myra. Unmute, please. Myra, please. Yeah, there we
Yeah, I was trying. I was not having a problem. Why did God stiffen Pharaoh's heart? Why would he do something like that? Wouldn't he just say, Pharaoh, let these people go?
Yes, because God has several reasons for the Exodus. And one of them is to utterly demolish Pharaoh. Pharaoh, who claims to be a god, is no god. God is demonstrating God's power over Pharaoh. Yes, briefly prolonging the suffering of the Israelites, also demonstrating God's power to the Israelites. So it's twofold. God wants to show the people who he is and what God can do. The Israelites will now be in a relationship with God, and God also wants to demonstrate, and he successfully, as it turns out, how powerful he is. And therefore, there are three purposes to the Exodus, really. One purpose is to free them, to end their suffering. The second purpose is to demonstrate God's power. And the third is to make a record which the Israelites will pass on from generation to generation, telling their children and their children telling their children, and so on. We see that repeatedly once they get out of Egypt, and even before, when they make the Paschal sacrifice, when they actually make it, God is saying again and again, tell your children, this is because what God did for me when God took me out of Egypt. Other comments, questions, anything? Yeah, Sandy.
Just a comment. If this happened today, there'd be Moses would say, you would think something like changing the working conditions and, making it better for the workers. instead of right away leaving. Of course, it wouldn't make a good story, but what do you think about that?
I think that this was his mission, right? His mission from God was not to make things a little bit better. His mission from God was tell Pharaoh, let my people go. So I don't think, first of all, that Moses had the latitude to do that. And secondly, things can be changed and then changed again, changed back, right? So they're looking for something much more than a temporary reprieve. They don't want to be slaves anymore. This people is not meant to be perpetually enslaved. God has other plans. God is also fulfilling the promise that he made to the ancestors, right? That he would take them to this land and it would be their land. So I think it's beyond Moses's commission, and B, it's not what God wants.
Thank you.
Sure. Anything else? Otherwise, onward. We are now just at the banks to the sea. So here, Pharaoh draws near. They have left. They've come to the sea. Pharaoh draws near. The Israelites catch sight of the Egyptians advancing. They're very scared. They cry to God, and they say to Moses, and this is the first time that we hear this, and we will hear this again and again and again. They say to Moses, was it want for graves in Egypt that you brought us to die in the wilderness? What have you done to us, taking us out of Egypt? Is this not the very thing we told you, saying, let us be? We will serve the Egyptians. It is better for us to serve them to die in the wilderness. This is similar in some ways to their complaint when the straw was taken away, but it's much stronger. You are killing us. Right? So what does Moses do? He speaks to them and he says, don't be afraid. Stand here and witness the deliverance which Adonai will work for you today. The Egyptian who you see today will no longer see you. You will no longer see again. Adonai will battle for you. Hold your peace. So what does Moses say? Moses is saying, you got to believe. If you believe that God is on our side, it'll all be fine. So he's encouraging them. He's dealing with their fear. He is evidencing a certain kind of leadership. But as we will see in the next verse, God doesn't want that kind of leadership. God says to Moses, why do you cry out to me? Tell the Israelites to move forward. So what did Moses say? Stand by and witness the deliverance. God is having none of that. He says, tell them to get going. And you lift your rod and hold your arm over the sea to split it, so the Israelites will march into the sea on dry ground. Right? What's important, I think, here is that God is reminding Moses that they have a partnership, right? And that the response here is not that Moses sits and waits. The people have to act. In some ways, part of this is that they have to deliver themselves. They'll do their part, and God will do God's part, right? So Moses will do something because if he doesn't lift his rod, the people will not understand his role here. And this is the rod through which many of the miracles are affected. And he's told to split it, and they'll march on dry ground. And again, I will stiffen the hearts of the Egyptians so that they go after them. and I will gain glory through Pharaoh and his warriors, his charts, and his riders. Let the Egyptians know that I am Adonai when I gain glory through Pharaoh, his chariots, and his riders. So here again, we see that this is part of God's intention. There's this old joke about someone who prays again and again to God that he should win the lottery. And God finally says, he says, I'm a faithful Jew and I do everything that you've commanded, all 613 commandments. And God finally says to him, buy a ticket. You have to do something too. And that's what we see here. We are up further on now in the Exodus narrative. They head out. They've come to the wilderness of Sin between Elim and Sinai. This is the 15th day of the second month. In the wilderness, they all grumble against Moses and Aaron. And again, if we had only died by the hand of Adonai in the land of Egypt, when we sat by the flesh pots and ate our fill of bread. Now, this is really a change. And I just want you to notice it. Before, they were assuming that the Egyptians would kill them. Remember, were there not enough graves in Egypt that you brought us here? Now they're saying, better God should have killed them. Why? We sat by the flesh pots where we ate our fill of bread. For you have brought us out, you, not God, you have brought us out into this wilderness to starve the whole people. Adonai says to Moses, I will rain down bread from the sky, and the people will go out and gather each day's portion, that I may test them to see whether they follow my instructions or not. But on the sixth day, when the portion they have brought out, it shall prove to be double, right? The test here is whether they will not collect the manna on Shabbat. They'll be given double portion. And we'll see that someone will violate it. And Moses says, and Aaron say to the Israelites, by evening you will know it was Adonai who brought you out of Egypt, and in the morning you will behold the presence of Adonai, because God has heard your grumblings. Now, their grumblings against God were really, why didn't God just kill us? But he then goes on to say, who are you to grumble against us? Right? Your grievance is not with us. It is Adonai who will give you flesh to eat. In other words, Moses is, on the one hand, announcing that God does care and God will take care of them. He's also refocusing their attention. They should know that what they're doing is an affront to God. Since it is God who will give you flesh to eat in the evening and bread in the morning, God has heard your grumblings. What is our part? That is me and Aaron. Your grumbling is against Adonai and not us. So God does, in fact, give them water and bread, and the manna will fall, and actually they will also get meat, which the quails will come down. So I'm going to move on now to, I think, a very telling scene. This is Jethro, now Moses' father-in-law, coming to him from Midian. Remember that Moses' father-in-law is a Midianite priest. He had heard all that God had done for Moses and for Israel, God's people, how Adonai had brought Israel out of Egypt. The first thing that's significant about this line is that here Jethro, sitting in Midian, has heard all about it. That is to say that one of the purposes of the Exodus, that is that God's reputation should be enlarged, that people should understand, even though Egypt is a major power, that the God of Israel is in fact much stronger than the so-called gods of Egypt, including Pharaoh. So when Moses hears it, he takes he takes he takes Zipporah, Moses's wife, after she had been sent home, her two sons, one of which was named Gershon, which is to say, I have been a stranger in a foreign land. That is Gershom, a stranger there. And the other was named Eliezer, meaning the God of my father's house was my help, delivering me from the sword of Pharaoh. So Eliezer, first of all, it seems that Moses' wife had been sent away. Why was she sent away? Not entirely clear. And perhaps Moses simply wanted to protect her. But after all, Moses knew that God was there and God would be taking care of the Egyptians. And so I have to say, and this is an aspect of leadership that makes me uncomfortable, Moses sent her away perhaps because his family was interfering with his job that he had. And we see this with leaders all the time, that their family relationships seem to suffer for the sake of their work relationships, their leadership. At any rate, the God of, right. So Yitro, Moses' father-in-law, brings his sons and his wife to him in the wilderness where they had encamped at the mountain of God, which of course is Mount Sinai. And he sent word to Moses, I, your father-in-law Yitro, am coming to you with your wife and your two sons. So Moses goes out to meet his father-in-law. He bows low, he kisses him, each asks after the welfare, and they went into the tent. So here we see that this special relationship that Moses has, he is, Moses who led the people out of Egypt, and he bows to him as an acknowledgement. This is in some ways kibbud av, right? This is honoring a parent in a way, although this is the father-in-law. And they catch up. And Moses then recounts to his father-in-law everything that Adonai had done to Pharaoh and the Egyptians for Israel's sake, and the hardships that had befallen them on the way, and how Adonai had delivered them. And Yitro rejoices over the kindness of Adonai. And Yitro says, blessed be Adonai, who delivered you from the Egyptians, who delivered the people from under the hand of the Egyptians. Now I know that Adonai is greater than all gods, yes, by reason of their very schemes against the people. Now, this is a really strong statement from someone who is, after all, a priest. He's a Midianite priest, not a priest to God, but a priest who serves actually other deities. And here he is acknowledging that Adonai is the supreme God. Again, coming back to one of the purposes of the Exodus, not only does Jethro know about it, but in fact, it has impacted him deeply. And he brings a burnt offering and sacrifices for God. And Aaron comes with all the elders of Israel to partake of the meal before God. So here, not sacrificing to a god of Midian, but sacrificing to the God of Israel, and everyone comes to enjoy it. The rabbis say that he converts. Not clear to me that he does, but it sure looks like something like that. And he will then travel with the Israelites. The next day, now, they have this reunion, everything's good. The next day, Moses gets back to work. He sat as a magistrate among the people, while the people stood about Moses from morning until evening. So one of Moses's job is to adjudicate complaints, problems, contentions between people. When Moses' father-in-law saw all that he had done for the people, he says, "What are you doing to the people?" Very ironic statement. He saw what he had done, all he had done, and he says, "Wait a minute, what are you doing? You act alone while all the people stand about you from morning till evening." One imagines great long lines of people. It's like waiting for Santa Claus, only much more so, right? These long, long lines, and the people stand from morning to evening. "Why are you doing this?" he says. And Moses replies, "It is because the people come to me to inquire of God. When they have a dispute, it comes to me. I decide between one party and another, and I make known the laws and teachings of God." And Moses' father-in-law says, "Not good. This thing you were doing is not right. You'll wear yourself out. You're going to burn out, and the people too. This task is too heavy for you. You cannot do it alone. Now listen to me. I will give you counsel, and God be with you. You represent the people before God. You bring the disputes before God and enjoin upon them the laws and teachings and make known to them the way they are to go and the practices they are to follow." He says, you're the one who represents the people to God, and you bring disputes, but your role really is to bring the laws and teachings and make them known the way they are to go. In other words, the big picture. This is the big picture. And as far as individuals, you should also seek out from among all the people capable individuals who fear God, trustworthy ones who spurn ill-gotten gain, right? So now he's giving him criteria, right? God-fearing people, right? They are trustworthy, they're loyal, and they don't want to get out of anything personal out of it. And set these as chiefs over thousands, hundreds, fifties, and tens, and let them judge the people at all times. So a hierarchy, a judicial hierarchy, have them bring every major dispute to you, let them decide every minor dispute, making it easy for yourself by letting them share the burden with you. If you do this, and so God commands you, that's a really striking statement. Right? This is what God wants you to do, says Jethro. God obviously does not want you to be worn out. If you do this, you will be able to get through. Right? You won't burn out. And these people will go home unwearied. And what does Moses do? He listens to Yitro and did just as he had said. Later on, we'll have a series of God will tell Moses to build a tabernacle, as you know, in the wilderness. God will specify all of the various parts of that tabernacle. And then Moses will take responsibility. Obviously, he doesn't do it, but Moses takes responsibility for making sure that the tabernacle is the way it is. And then again and again it says, and Moses did as God had said. And Moses did as God had said. And I think it's striking here. Moses did just as Yitro had said. So this is a real element of Moses's leadership, I think, at least from his father-in-law. He's willing to take advice. He, even though also noticed that God did not set this up. God wasn't concerned with how Moses was going to do this part of his job. He left it to Moses's initiative. But Yitro, who has been in the God business his whole life, and presumably also has a leadership role as people would come to him to know what the gods will require of them. He says to Moses, I understand how this is done. Listen to me, and I'll tell you how it's done. And it's striking to me that Moses is willing to listen. You know, there's a statement in Pirkei Avot, Ezehu Chacham Halomed Mikol Adam. Who's really wise? One who learns from all people. And here Moses is showing, as part of his leadership, an openness. We're going to see another example, a very dramatic example of something like this a little bit later. Okay, I will pause. Comments on any of this? Anything at all as we think about Moses's first challenges coming out of Egypt, and his relationship with his father-in-law here, and his willingness to accept his guidance. All right, moving along. Here we are at the golden calf. We've jumped ahead considerably. And I didn't bring you the details of the golden calf because I'm interested in how Moses deals with it. Moses has been up on the mountain for 40 days and 40 nights receiving Torah. Hurry down, for your people who you brought out of Egypt have acted basely. They've been quick to turn aside from the way that I enjoined on them. They made themselves a molten calf, bowed to it, sacrificed, saying, "This is your God of Israel, who brought you out of Egypt." And God says to him, I see this is a stiff-necked people. Let me be now. My anger may blaze before against them, that I may destroy them and make of you a great nation. So God does several things here. The first is, they're your people who you brought out of Egypt. God is completely disavowing God's relationship to the people, right? It's not my people. It's not I who brought them out of Egypt. You did it, right? And you can sense God's anger here. And they have been quick to go aside from the way I enjoin them. They've made a molten calf, bowed down to it. So God says to him, I see that they are a stiff-necked people. And this is really interesting. He says, now let me be. So God is saying here, actually, that Moses does have a lot of influence on God. It's a really telling statement, right? He says, leave me alone. Don't try to convince me to do anything other than what I want to do, that my anger may blaze forth against them, I may destroy them, and make of you a great nation. So here God is saying to Abraham, these people are no good. I disavow them, but you will be the next Abraham. I will make of you a great nation, not the descendants exclusively, or not all of them. You are the only descendant of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, through whom I will make this great nation. And what does Moses do immediately? Let not your anger blaze forth against your people who you have delivered from Egypt with great power and a mighty hand. And now he has arguments, right? Doing exactly what God told him not to do. He's not leaving him alone. So let not the Egyptians say it was with evil intent that he delivered them, only to kill them off in the mountains and annihilate them from the face of the earth, right? This is bad for your reputation, God. The whole thing, in addition to taking them out, was about God's reputation. And now, what are you doing? How will people view you? That you are a capricious God who turns your back on people who apparently you were willing to do a great deal for. So turn from your anger, renounce your plan, right? Very strong language. Remember your servants, Abraham, Isaac, and here Israel, who you swore to them by yourself and said, right? You made an oath, right? You are bound by that oath. So the first is bad PR. The second is your power is no longer unlimited because you made a vow, you swore it, and in swearing it, you have deliberately limited your power. You said to them, I will make your offspring as numerous as the stars of the heaven. I will give your offspring the whole land, which you will profess forever. And it works. It absolutely works. God renounces the punishment planned for God's people. Thereupon, Moses turns, he goes down the mountain bearing the two tablets of the pact, right? These are the Ten Commandments, tablets inscribed on both their surfaces, on one side and on the other. These are miraculous tablets. The work of were God's work, the writing was God's writing. And when Joshua hears the sound of the people, he says to Moses, he's halfway up the mountain. So there is a cry of war in the camp. And Moses says, it is not the tune of triumph. Nice, by the way. The translator here it is not the sound of the tune of triumph, nice alliteration, or the sound of the tune of defeat. It is the sound of song that I hear. And as Moses comes near, he saw the calf and the dancing. He became enraged, and he hurled the tablets from his hands and shattered them at the foot of the mountain. So now Moses, having propitiated God's anger, now himself becomes angry. And he hurls the tablets and shatters them. Now, it's really hard to understand, I think, why Moses does this. Remember that the tablets were God's work and the writing was God's writing. God had actually written these tablets, as it were, right? So these are holy, sacred objects. And here Moses is destroying them. So the rabbis have a great deal of, they obviously see this as a problem. And they give a variety of answers to it. And I am going to add one of my own, which is one of them is quite almost supernatural. And that is that the tablets were incredibly heavy. And the only reason that Moses could, because they're stone after all, and they're pretty big, because they have all of these commandments written on them, and there are two of them, right? So how is he carrying them? Well, the rabbis say it is because the writing, this sacred writing, which after all is God's writing, enabled him to carry them, that he was bearing them because they were absorbing the weight. And then when the tablets witness what the Israelites are doing, the writing flies off to the sky. Can't bear it. And then Moses simply drops the tablets. Can't carry them. Now, the problem with that midrash, which is very nice in some ways, is the language here. And Moses hurled the tablets from his hands. So what are we to make of that? I think one way to understand it, there's a lovely midrash that says, what is on the tablets? I am the Lord your God. You shall have no other God before me, and you shall not worship anything, any image. So this is the covenant. This is a copy of the covenant. And Moses is, as it were, tearing it up. He does not want them, according to this understanding, to be bound by this covenant. Because if they are, then in fact, God would have the right to punish them. So that's a second possible explanation. The third one, which I think actually is perhaps more accurate, is that he was afraid of a different kind of idolatry. After all, he comes down with the tablets. The people could see him, they could realize their mistake, and then what? They would take the tablets and begin worshiping them. And Moses has to do something to prevent that. There is this sort of this concern, and it continues to this day, about material objects which are connected to God becoming objects of worship in themselves. And I want to give you an example from shul, from synagogue. Saturday morning, what do? We take out the Torah, right? It's not the tablets, it's not written in God's hand, right? But it's God's word. We take it out and we say, this is what God gave to Moses, right? So it's about God. And then what we do, and I think this is really striking, they come out, they turn towards the congregation, and what does the person carrying the tablet say? Shema Yisrael, right? Only God is God. Not this thing. And yes, we show it respect. And so we stand and we touch it and we kiss it and so on, but we're respecting it not because of what it is, but of who gave it to us. And I think perhaps that Moses has a similar thought here. He doesn't want these tablets to be destroyed. So three different possibilities. What does he do? Right? First, making sure that is clear and it's dramatic and it's something that people will see and hear. Then he takes the calf they have made, burned it, grinds it to powder, strews it upon water, and makes them drink it. In some way, it's like the old story of you washing your mouth out with soap when you curse. I don't think anyone does that anymore. But there's also here, this looks a lot like the ordeal that a woman accused of adultery is in Numbers. We're told the Sota, this woman whose husband accused her of adultery, also has to drink a potion, right, in order to show that she has been faithful. And here, Moses, in some ways, is creating a potion that also has to do with infidelity. In this case, the infidelity of the people to their God. And Moses says to Aaron now, hey, I left you in charge, right? So he's holding he's holding his brother to account. And Aaron says, no, don't be mad at me. They said to me, make us a god to lead us for that fellow Moses who brought us out of Egypt. We don't know what happened to him. And so I said, whoever has gold, take it off. They gave it to me. And I threw it into the fire and the calf came out. I don't know. I was, and in a sense, Aaron is saying, and certainly this is how the tradition understands it, I tried to stall them. And I asked them for their gold, so they would have to give something up, and maybe they'd be reluctant. Now Moses sees that when he saw the people were out of control, since Aaron had let them out of control, so that they were a menace to any who would oppose them. And he stands up and he says, everyone who is for Adonai, come here. And the men of Levi around him, and he says, "Thus says Adonai, put your thorn on your thigh and go and kill all of the people who have been rebellious, sibling, neighbor, and kin," and they do as Moses had bid, and 3,000 people die. And Moses says, "Dedicate yourselves to Adonai. Each of you has been against blood relations, that God may bestow a blessing on you." And Moses says, "The people, you've been guilty of a great sin, and now I will go to Adonai and maybe win forgiveness for your sin." And God goes up and he says to God, "This people is guilty. Now, if you will forgive their sin, well and good. But if not, erase me from the record you have written." So first, Moses deals with the leaders of this, in some sense, rebellion, right? And now, having purged them, he does not want the rest of the people to be found guilty. And he goes up and he says, "If you won't forgive them, kill me." Essentially, that's what he's saying. God, who had said to Moses, "I'll get rid of the people and I'll make you the new, the new Abraham. All of the people will descend from you." And God says, "Fine, then kill me if you won't forgive them." And Adonai says, "Only one has sinned against me. Only one who has sinned against me will I erase from my record." Not a clear statement, maybe a statement about Aaron, not really even clear at all. "Go now, lead the people where I told you. My messenger will go before you. When I make an accounting, I will bring them to an account." So Moses says, "Go back and lead them, and my messenger, my representative, will go before you." So here, what God is saying effectively is, "Okay, I won't destroy them, and certainly I won't kill you, but ultimately there will be an accounting, and I'm not going to be with you anymore. I'm not going to be in the camp anymore. I'm not the one who will go before you." And Moses doesn't like that. He says, "See, you say to me, lead this people forward, but you have not made known to me who you will send with me. Furthermore, you have said, I have singled you out by name, and you have indeed gained my favor. Now, if I have truly gained your favor, let me know your ways, that I may know you and continue in your favor. Consider too that this nation is your people." And God said, "I will go in the lead and lighten your burden." So God says, "Okay, I will do it." And Moses goes, "If you won't go, don't make us leave. For how shall it be known that your people have gained your favor unless you go with us, so that we will be distinguished, your people and I, from every people on earth?" So God says, "Okay, I won't remove myself," and Moses isn't done, right? He said, "What about your reputation, right? And what about the people's reputation, right?" And God says, "I will also do this thing, for you have truly gained my favor and I've singled you out." So Moses is, in effect, saying to God, "Hey, if you really, if you really care about me, if you really appreciate my leadership, then do this for me." And God says, "Okay." This is a really strong play that Moses does here. An extraordinary leadership, standing up to God in this way and asking for this, and not taking yes for an answer, keep continuing. And then he says, "Oh, let me behold your presence." So Moses sees that God is really open to Moses, sorry. Moses sees that God is open to him, and he says, "I want to know you more intimately." And God says, I will make my goodness pass before you. God's goodness and God's presence here, not God exactly. I will go before you and I will proclaim my name and the grace that I grant you and the compassion that I will show. You can't see my face. Every human being will not see me and live. See, there is a place near me. Station yourself at the rock. My presence passes by. I will put you in a cleft of the rock, shield you with my hand until I have passed by. I will take my hand away and you will see my back. My face you not see. So Moses, God is saying to Moses, look, we have an extraordinary relationship. I will do everything I can for you. I will let you see as much of me as it's possible for you to see. Now, what God will show Moses, when God talks about God's name, is also this line which we see again and again in our liturgy, Adonai, Adonai El Chanun V'Rahum. Adonai, Adonai is a God of mercy. And Moses will be using that against him, as we'll see in a bit. First, we've covered a lot. Comments on any of this? Yeah, Sandy.
Excuse me, going back to the second midrash.
Yeah.
That you told, if I understood you right, you said that the people hadn't gotten yet the 10 Commandments that said you shall not commit idolatry. So they shouldn't be blamed for what they did. Did you say something like that?
Yes, I think, but I meant it in a very technical sense, right? That Moses could, the Midrash is suggesting that Moses is being very lawyerly here. They haven't received the document, but they have it, right? So, and beyond that, they said whatever God says we will do. I think that the sequence is a little off. I agree, but I think God sees this calf as really an affront. Particularly, this is the God who led you out of Egypt, right? And God wants Moses in this midrash, in some ways, is trying to mitigate that. And yes, as I was thinking about it, I realized they don't hear it until afterwards. But I think the point is still the same. Go ahead, Sandy.
No, but in the Torah, there's a section before that where the people say we've heard all and we agree to what God says. So they do know about they're not supposed to do that. So I never understood that midrash as making any logical sense.
Well, I think again that it's technical. They've agreed to the contract, but they haven't actually received it.
Okay, thank you.
I mean, Moses is doing his best, right? And I'm not saying I accept the midrash. I'm just saying I think that's what the rabbis are about. So,
thank you.
Yeah, I was going to say that Yitro really deserves, the name of a parsha because he was so firm in advising Moshe about having judges and all he did for Moshe and for the Israelites. It was really a meritorious situation for him.
Yeah, I think it is. I would point out though that Korach also has the name of a parsha.
Oh, yeah, and Balak.
And Balak too. So you can infamy also seems to the names of the parshiot really, if you think about it, why is this a Torah reading named how it's named? Because they're the first significant words in the parsha. That's really all. As much as we want to read more into it, Achrei Mot is called Achrei Mot, not because of its content, except that it says Achrei Mot, after the death of Aaron's sons. Achrei Mot means after the death. Not to say that people don't play around with it. Yitro is, as you say, an extraordinary figure. Um, he, I was just thinking that, oh, an example of people playing around, that some years we read the Parshiot Achrimot and Kedoshim together, right? So it becomes Achrimot Kedoshim after the death, and then Kedoshim means holy or sanctified. So there is it's a sort of a rabbinic joke, which is Achrei Kedoshim, after death they are holy, which is to say, however bad they were, when you give the eulogy, they were holy. That is to say, we don't speak ill of the dead. And rabbis do try to fashion their words in such a way as to put a person in the best possible light. Any other questions about Yitro, the golden calf, Moses's leadership? I hope I've showed you how skilled Moses is in navigating his relationship with God and in being a steadfast advocate for the people. We're going to stop here. We are out of time and a bit more. Just to reiterate what I said at the beginning, we will finish this part, I would think, in another 2 sessions, and then we'll move on. The week of Thanksgiving and the following week, we won't have class. We'll pick up right after that, moving on to our next leaders, Deborah and Samson. Also, as I do each year, I would mention that if you would like to sponsor this class, there's no charge for it, but if you would like to sponsor it, you can do so by sending whatever amount you want, if any. And if you want a recommendation, I'd say $72, 36, twice high, but grateful to take more or less. In part, it simply subsidizes my Zoom so that so that I can do this. All right. At any rate, thanks again for being here. Again, no need to do that unless you feel moved to do it. They say that one should never use the Torah as a spade, which is to say the Torah should be taught and learned for its own sake. And so I'm certainly not charging for this. If you want to help, thank you. If you don't, that's fine too. Okay. Yeah, Michael, go ahead.
How would you send that? To where? To whom? To how?
Yeah, okay. Yes. I'm going to send out an email with the recording, and I'll put it on there.
Oh, the guy.
All right. You can.
Okay.
I'll give you several ways to do it. You can do it through Zelle. If you want, you can mail it to me. I'll give you a bunch of ways. Okay. And I appreciate the fact that you're interested in doing it. Okay. See you all next week, God willing. Bye now.
Thank you.
you.
Thank you.